Someone asked, what changed in the fitness industry regarding sodium? Before, don't eat salt. Now, drink salt.
Great question.
It's a great question.
Do you know what, and I guess I can hypothesize what the reasons were that people were anti-sodium, and I'm guessing blood pressure, like too much sodium correlated with high blood pressure, risk of heart attack, etc., was part of what was at the base of that. Do you know what else was driving like an anti-sodium movement during its time?
That was the main reason. It was like, but a lot of it was based off of correlational data of people. It was like people who eat very high salt also often have very high blood pressure. And if you eat a lot of salt, like it can have a direct impact on your blood pressure immediately. So the recommendations were, especially if you have high blood pressure, you need to reduce salt. But what they weren't taking into account was that a lot of these people who had high blood pressure, they were also super overweight. They were also often smoking. They were not exercising, and they were eating so much salt, not because they were salting their foods, but because the vast majority of the food they were eating was highly processed food that also needed to have a lot of salt as a preservative or whatever it was. So like the salt, it came with a ton of extra salt, and their lifestyle factors in combination with that was a big issue. And then this is actually, I think you might have found me for my guest article on Eric Cressy's website in 2011 was about salt intake. That was, I wrote that. And I remember because I had always been taught that you needed to reduce sodium. And I started writing that article for Eric, like parroting what I had been taught in school and everything. And then I started doing research, and I was like, I wrote like the first half of the article, and then I wanted to cite sources. So I started looking them up, and I was like, holy shit. I'm so glad that I'm actually researching this, because I almost gave Eric Cressy, my first ever like big guest article, a factually incorrect piece of content that I had learned in college about, like, you needed to, in my sports nutrition class, which is ironic because like sports nutrition, like they should be talking about the electrolytes, all that stuff. But I was told you should not be having a lot of sodium, when the reality is all of these other variables were massively confounding, not to mention it's easier to increase potassium, which will then have essentially the same effect of reducing sodium, but it's far easier. Like if you look at the research around very low sodium diets, they are so difficult for people to sustain. It's so for any number of reasons, not least of which it's just super bland and not enjoyable. But if you increase potassium, you get the exact same benefits of reducing sodium without actually having to reduce sodium. And that will improve your blood pressure. And also, if you're increasing potassium, odds are you're having more fruits and vegetables and less processed food. So you're going to be improving your body composition. You're going to be improving the quality of your foods, like all that stuff. So a lot of the initial hatred and fear mongering around sodium was based around people who weren't living healthy lifestyles anyways. Now I see a lot of people talking about sodium and how you need to be having it in your pre-workout, you need to be drinking it, and I do think it is going too far. I think I see people who are like, yeah, you need to be drinking a lot of salt and make sure you're hydrated. It's like, unless you're sweating a crazy fucking amount, like you're good. like most people, especially people who are overweight and have high blood pressure, like they should not really be adding salt to their shit. Like, let's focus on other things. But if you are sweating a lot from your workouts, you're a highly active individual, sure, by all means, like do that. But I do think it has swung to the extreme, which is very fitness industry-esque in terms of like, now we've got everybody adding fucking salt to their drinks. I'm like, all right, relax. Like your blood pressure is 160/85. Like I think you don't need to be adding salt to your pre-workout.